Wicked. As within a review, this may contain spoilers. The movie is okay, but I left underwhelmed. I'll get to why in a bit. This is the film adaptation of the Broadway show Wicked, which premiered on Broadway in 2003. Wicked tells the untold story of the witches from The Wizard of Oz. It chronicles the origins of the Wicked Witch of the West and Glinda the Good. Cynthia Erivo plays Elphaba, who becomes the Wicked Witch of the West. Ariana Grande plays Glinda, who becomes Glinda the Good. Elphaba is a young woman who was born with green skin, which makes her an outcast to most people she meets and has powers that she can't control. Glinda is a privileged young woman who normally gets what she wants. The two meet as students at Shiz University and over time form a bond and care for each other. In addition to the story focusing on Elphaba and Glinda, there's also an animal rights storyline. The animals in this world can speak and are productive members of society. One of the professors at Shiz University is a goat who teaches Ozian history. One of the subplots in the story is the discrimination of the animals, and there's a concerted effort for the animals to lose their rights and lose their ability to speak. As I mentioned earlier, I was a bit underwhelmed. One of the reasons for me feeling that way comes from the animal plotline. I don't feel it was executed very well. It often felt like an off-to-the-side story that had little impact on me. I felt this way with the musical as well, and I was hoping the movie version would expand the storyline and make it more impactful. To give you more context, last year in October 2023, I went to New York City and saw Wicked, the Broadway show. This made the story familiar to me, and while the film version did expand on the Broadway show, in my opinion, it didn't do enough with the animal plotline. The following may be considered a spoiler, so you've been warned. One thing that I didn't know about this movie, and was a bit surprised, is that this is part 1. Usually this type of information is something that I would be aware of, but I never saw any marketing or others mentioning that this is part 1. I don't know how many parts the studio plans on making. Not sure if part 1 and part 2 were shot back to back, or if they still need to make part 2. I'm guessing they were shot back to back since part 2 is scheduled to be released in November 2025. By all indications, part 1 is going to be a smash. It's probably smart not to market the movie as part 1. Look what that did to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning part 1. The box office numbers were not great or what the studio expected, so the next film dropped part 2 from the title. Usually when the audience knows that the film doesn't have an ending, they might wait to see part 1 on a streaming service or even wait to see it right before part 2 comes out. That's not always the case, but in some instances, having part 1 in the title could harm the movie's prospects. I mentioned that part of me feeling underwhelmed with the story was the animal plotline, and since this is only part 1, perhaps part 2 will provide a deeper emotional connection to that storyline. Another aspect that I have an issue with is my lack of glee, if you will, with the punchlines. Obviously, since the story was familiar to me when I went to see the show, I knew the punchlines. During the Broadway show, the punchlines made me laugh, but in the movie, I didn't find them amusing. One could argue that since I was aware of the punchlines, they would not hit as hard as the first time, and that's partially true. However, I've rewatched many comedies before and still find them funny. But in this case, I can't help but feel that something was off with the film version. The best punchlines in the story come from Glinda, and perhaps I'm too biased, but I felt that the performer from the Broadway show, at the time it was Mackenzie Kurtz, executed the jokes better than Ariana Grande. I'm not saying that Ariana was bad as Glinda, because she wasn't. She was good, but in my opinion, not as good as Mackenzie Kurtz. Maybe if I had never seen the Broadway show, then perhaps I would have a different opinion, but since I did, that's how I feel. Overall, the movie is okay and entertaining, and it may be worth watching. If you stuck around this long, why not give the video a like, try it out, see if it works, subscribe, check out my other videos, leave a comment, let me know what you think of the film. See you in the next review.